Good morning. My name is Blaine Lawson. This is the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. I trust that you are well today. There's a video up already today. It is last night, my friend Paul Swanson and I got together and talked about a bunch of things. We talked about the primary situation. Some of you have watched it already. But he mentioned something that I thought was really important, something I had not heard explained, but it makes perfect sense. It's called the mere exposure effect. And we're going to talk about that and how it's related to everything that's happened while this whole planet seems upside down. In an article that was written by my friend Paul Swanson about the mere exposure effect, that's available on paulswanson.com, paulswanson.com, and that's Swanson with an E because it's Swedish and he's a Swedish guy I know. So yeah, you want to check out that. And I did a little bit more research and started thinking about what this mirror exposure effect, how it's affected where we are in our society today. And we'll do that after we get back from this message.
What's going on, Tampa? Jeff Dow from JD's Pressure Washing here again, and we wanted to share something really cool with you that we're going to be doing that you can be a part of. Tampa is home to 21,000 veterans. We all love our vets, and being one myself, we wanted to find a way that we could give back. So here's what we're going to do. For every 10 jobs that we do that are $300 or more, we're going to do one veteran home for free. Now, when I say home, we're talking house wash, driveway, sidewalks, and perimeter fence if they have one. So I need your help with exposure on this so that we can get the jobs that we need as well as the veteran homes to clean, which is going to be a total surprise for them. We're going to show up, knock on the door, and let them know right then and there in the moment what it is that we're going to be doing for them. It is going to be pretty cool. And here's a bonus offer for all of you who help us with this. We're also going to offer 15% off all cleaning that's over $300 just to say thanks. So if you could do me a huge favor, like, comment, and share this video so that we can get the word out and start cleaning homes of veterans right here in Tampa.
All right. Mere exposure effect. This is from paulswanson.com. If you're wondering why up is down and down is up in our culture, it's turning to things on their, everything's turning on their head. Here's why. The mere exposure effect is a psychological phenomenon whereby when people tend to develop a preference for things merely because they are familiar with them. The concept was first introduced by psychologist Robert Zajanok in 1968. Through his research, which demonstrated that the mere repeated exposure to a stimulus could enhance one's attitude towards it. The effect is applicable in a wide range of stimuli, including objects, images, sounds, and even abstract concepts. Here are key aspects and implications of the mere exposure effect. Underlying mechanisms. One of the underlying mechanisms of this is familiarity. Okay. The fundamental principle behind the mere exposure effect is that familiarity leads to liking. The more that we are exposed to something, the more familiar it becomes. And this familiarity breeds a sense of comfort and preference. We say it all the time. It's better the devil you know than the devil that you don't know, right? Which leads to reduced fear and uncertainty. Familiar stimuli are perceived as safe and less threatening compared to unfamiliar ones. This reduction in fear and uncertainty can lead to a more positive evaluation of the stimulus. Think about the battered wife syndrome. We all wonder how can anybody stay through all that? Well, the unknown, believe it or not, leaving him or leaving her is more frightening than staying because it's unfamiliar. Now, I know that that's a huge example, but you can kind of see how this is working, right? The third underlying mechanism is cognitive ease. Repeated exposure facilitates easier cognitive processing of the stimulus, which is often experienced as pleasant. Yeah, I've been through this before. I know what this is. As opposed to having to negotiate something new. Things that are easier to process are typically preferred over those that require more effort to understand. Devil you know versus devil that you don't know. Some of the applications and examples. Paul writes, advertising. The mere exposure effect is widely used in marketing and advertising. Brands repeatedly expose customers to their advertisements, logos, and products, hoping to increase familiarity and consequently preference for their offerings. So we wonder, does Coke really still need to advertise? Who doesn't know Coke? Who doesn't know Pepsi? Who doesn't know McDonald's? But they keep advertising. They want to keep that before you all the time. And even if you don't have a preference, you think you do. Why? Because you are comfortable with McDonald's and you're comfortable with Coke products. Why? Because you keep seeing them. Although you hardly drive into a McDonald's and you hardly ever have a Coke. But they're your preference. If asked, they're your preference. Why? Because you see them all the time. They keep doing it. Music and entertainment. Songs or movies often become more likable after several exposures. This effect explains why a tune that is initially seemed unremarkable might become a favorite after it's been heard multiple times. Earworms, you know. That's why on the radio, and none of us listen to the radio anymore, that's why on the radio, they have a playlist where they play the same, you know, if you tune in at 16 after the hour, that song is playing. Is 16 after the hour at 1:16, 2:16, 3:16, 4:16, 5:16. That tune is playing because they want to keep that in your ear and to keep that where you might not have noticed it the first time, but the second, third, fourth, fifth, 16, 17, 18th time, oh, now you think, well, that song's catchy. It's got a catchy beat. Well, so it's not any more catchy than it was the first time. But you've heard it a lot. So you're familiar with it. And it becomes a preference. That's why, you know, after you watch a movie a bunch of times, thus the idea of, and I'm getting ahead of myself, all the remakes, right? All the Disney remakes, all the remakes of all movies. Why? Because people are familiar with them and comfortable. So it takes less processing. It's not a new idea, it's not a new story. They may change it up some, but for the most part, it's the same. And easier to accept. Social relationships. People may develop a liking for individuals they see or interact with regularly, even without engaging in deep conversations. Most of us do this, right? This can apply to coworkers, classmates, or neighbors, right? There's somebody you see all the time. You don't ever say much more than, how you doing? Good morning. Have a good night. Have a great weekend. That may be all you say to them. But you see them all the time. So when you see them, you don't feel like you have to do anything or say anything different. You're comfortable. You feel almost safe with them. Why? Because you see them all the time. You are familiar with them. So if anybody ever acts sort of out of character, it's always a shock and a surprise. We hear it all the time. He seems so quiet, and then he killed all those people with a spoon? Was it a tablespoon or was it a wooden spoon? He seemed so nice. Because you felt safer on that person, right? And what we're going to get into later in the program is political and ideological exposures. Repeated exposure to a certain political message or ideology can lead to increased acceptance and preference for those ideas, regardless of the content's objective merit, how it is on the surface. You just keep getting exposed to it. Keep getting exposed to it. People keep saying it. People keep saying it. People keep saying it. They keep saying it. Media keeps saying it until you think that, well, everybody thinks this way. This is what I prefer because you've never thought about it objectively. It's the one that you are most familiar with until it becomes your preference. This is what we're going to talk about. Hopefully, I've piqued your interest. We'll be back right after this.
What's going on, Tampa? Jeff Dow from JD's Pressure Washing here again, and we wanted to share something really cool with you that we're going to be doing that you can be a part of. Tampa is home to 21,000 veterans. We all love our vets, and being one myself, we wanted to find a way that we could give back. So here's what we're going to do. For every 10 jobs that we do that are $300 or more, we're going to do one veteran home for free. Now, when I say home, we're talking house wash, driveway, sidewalks, and perimeter fence if they have one. So I need your help with exposure on this so that we can get the jobs that we need as well as the veteran homes to clean, which is going to be a total surprise for them. We're going to show up, knock on the door, and let them know right then and there in the moment what it is that we're going to be doing for them. It is going to be pretty cool. And here's a bonus offer for all of you who help us with this. We're also going to offer 15% off all cleaning that's over $300 just to say thanks. So if you could do me a huge favor, like, comment, and share this video so that we can get the word out and start cleaning homes of veterans right here in Tampa.
How do you deal with this mistrust and this great appetite for outsiders?
Well, one, I would push back on this idea that I'm representing establishment forces. I get attacked by the corporate press more than anybody running for office, more than Joe Biden, and now more than Donald Trump, because I think the corporate press views me as a bigger threat. They understand that I will beat Biden, and they know I will actually deliver on all these things, whereas I think they think that Trump would not beat Biden. And then I think they think even if he did, that he would be distracted with all these other stuff and wouldn't be able to deliver. So I've been the target of all these people, and I think it's because I've been willing to lead.
Representation matters. Or does it? We are hearing that more and more often. When the new press secretary took over, the old one mentioned, was asked about her, and she mentioned that representation matters. Karine Jean-Pierre is, whatever her name is Black. She's not African American, she's Black. And she is a lesbian. And of course, a woman. I guess she identifies as a woman at this point. And that representation is important. So people like her, I guess, can see that it can be done. And this is the mentality that they push at you. And it seems to, on the surface, make sense. But you have to understand the underlying tool that's being used. The tool is normalization. If I can expose you to something enough, I can normalize it. Thus make you familiar with it. And that is what? The mirror effect. The mirror exposure effect. I just exposed you to it. I didn't have to do anything but expose you to it again and again. You see it again. Representation. You watch a movie. We're going to use LGBTQIE plus ampersand for a while because it makes a great tool in this. I'm going to expose you to gay characters again and again. And I'm even going to make some of the gay characters in your sitcoms the funny one, the one you like, the character that you like. Not because they're gay, but because they get all the funny lines. So I'm going to normalize the gay person in the room. And I'm going to make you feel comfortable with them because when they show up on the screen, you know something funny is going to happen, right? It's going to normalize it for you. But I'm going to keep exposing you to it. They'll be your favorite gay character in all your sitcoms, right? And some sitcoms will be based around two gay characters. and primarily they have been men. Have you noticed? Have you noticed? Anybody old enough to remember when Ellen came out? Ellen DeGeneres came out, and then her show ended up, being a lot of storylines about her being gay, and a very popular program was canceled after a little while because that really wasn't what they were after. When I say they, I mean leftists, I mean progressives. When I say they, however, uh, the shows with male gay characters who are funny, who are outrageous, who you see every week, and now because of how we do TV, you may see them every day, and you may just binge watch an entire season, right? They have normalized homosexuality, which is why people go, I don't see anything wrong with it. That's why they don't see anything wrong with it. You wonder why your kids don't see anything wrong with it. Why you can see why some people are now saying they prefer it and have adopted it. Why? Because it's been fed to them. It's been fed to them. They've been exposed to it. And in our culture, day after day, 24/7. When you're an old fart like me, I didn't know when I was, oh golly, until I got to college. I didn't know any openly gay people. I did not. And it wasn't like I thought I lived some sheltered homeschool lifestyle, because I did not. I just didn't know any. I didn't personally know any openly gay people. Now I do. I didn't before. I hadn't been exposed to them, because there weren't any openly gay characters on television. I didn't read any books that had any openly gay, gay characters. As a matter of fact, back then you wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have happened. I didn't watch any movies that had openly gay characters, and I didn't see any television shows with, week to week that had openly gay characters. I didn't. They weren't there. But as soon as these folks found out about the mirror exposure effect, right? Then you started to hear things like representation matters. And of course they're using the reasoning that, people need to see other people who look like them. Why? What did the first quote, I'll say, what did the first Black person who did whatever, who did they see? What pushed them to attain? What pushed them? But this is being used again and again, and it's getting used in political ideologies. This is why, see, you have MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, all pushing the very same narrative. Now even Fox News, to a degree, all pushing the same narrative. Day after day, 24/7. News cycle, 24/7. Why? Because that's the one they want out. That's the one that they, and again, I say they because it's the leftists and progressives I'm talking about when I say they. That's what they want. So people will start thinking, well, I just want to hear all the time. It must be true. I want to keep saying it to expose you to it, all the time. So it becomes what you think is your preference. It's not your preference, because you haven't thought about it enough for it to be your preference. Do you really like Coke better than Pepsi? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do you really like McDonald's more than Burger King? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. When was the last time you were in Burger King? But you see more McDonald's ads than you see Burger King ads. And you may not ever see a Five Guys ad, but you like McDonald's and Coke products. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You're just familiar with what you've seen, what's been told to you, what's been sold to you. You think affirmative action is a good thing. Why? Because it's all, it seems like it's always been there for a lot of us. Everybody that you hear who's a quote expert in quote talks about how wonderful it is, right? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But you've been exposed. Merely exposed. Maybe it hasn't affected you or affected you one single way in your life ever that you're aware of. But you think it's a good idea because you're being told it's a good idea. Which is why, and all these things are tied together, because this is why when something or somebody shows up that's antithetical to your views, your acquired views, preferences, there's this cognitive discourse, because now you have to accept something else, which is why people say, I get this question all the time: why do Black people about Democrats? Because if they have to break out of what they've been sold all these years, it would be very, very difficult, because this is a comfortable. And I hate this analogy. Why didn't slaves leave? I hate this analogy. Why didn't slaves leave the plantation when they could have? They could have, when people went to war, they could have easily overpowered the staff. Easily. They knew where the guns were. They didn't. Because it was the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't know. That's why. That is why. All right, we're going to finish up after this message. Thanks so much for coming to the Morning Report. Again, my name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. We'll be back right after this. All right, in conclusion, the mere exposure effect reveals the power of familiarity in shaping our preferences and attitudes. Things that we just get used to, things that we just things that get presented to us again and again, ideas, thoughts that get presented to us again and again. So we're familiar with them. So we wonder, how do people end up with racist views? If it's presented to you every single day, it's not surprising that people will develop that view about a group of people or anything, really, right? It sort of underscores the subtle ways repeated exposure can influence decision making, preferences, and even social relationships, highlighting the complex interplay between exposure, cognition, and emotion. Understanding this effect is crucial for fields ranging from marketing to social psychology to politics, as it provides insights into seemingly simple repeated exposures can shape attitudes and preferences. So, if you're in the church, people say all the time, be careful what you watch, be careful what you listen to, be careful what you let your kids watch, be careful what you let your kids listen to, be careful what they hear in school. Be knowledgeable of this stuff, because again, it may seem harmless, but repeated exposure can underscore, again, the subtle ways that can influence decision making, preferences, and even social relationships. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. Till we see you again, go out there and learn to love somebody, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye now.